Mirrors never lie. Okay. But they don't always tell the truth either. That night, he thought he was alone until his reflection refused to move. And then, it smiled. In a forgotten mansion, the mirrors were spotless, glowing as if alive. The villagers warned no one to enter, but he didn't believe in ghost stories. When the candlelight touched the glass, he realized, the mirrors had been waiting for him. The real terror was only beginning. The house was silent, its furniture drowning in dust, yet every mirror shone as if freshly polished. Villagers spoke of footsteps, whispers, and cold hands reaching from the dark. He laughed it off, believing the house was empty. But tonight, the mirrors were hungry. The real terror was only beginning. The house was silent, its furniture drowning in dust, yet every mirror shone as if freshly polished. Villagers spoke of footsteps, whispers, and cold hands reaching from the dark. He laughed it off, believing the house was empty. But tonight, the mirrors were hungry. As he walked deeper into the hallway, the air grew colder. The wooden floor groaned beneath his feet, but there was another sound, faint but certain, like someone trailing just behind him. Every time he turned, the corridor stretched into emptiness, and the mirrors lining the walls reflected his confusion back at him. Yet, in one of them, he thought he saw a second shadow moving when he stood perfectly still. The further he went, the stranger it became. Dust covered everything, yet not a single speck dared to touch the mirrors. They gleamed with an unnatural sharpness, each reflection slightly delayed, as though the glass was struggling to mimic reality. His laughter faded into silence. Something inside him whispered that he shouldn't be there, but pride forced him forward. When the wind rattled the shutters, he startled, dropping his candle for a moment. The flame almost died before he relit it, but in that brief flicker of darkness, he swore he saw dozens of faces pressed against the mirrors, pale and twisted, vanishing the instant the light returned. His hands trembled, but he convinced himself it was a trick of the mind. He entered what must have been the grand hall. Broken chairs and shattered tables lay in heaps, but the massive mirror against the wall stood untouched, clearer than any glass he had ever seen. He moved closer, drawn to it against his will. His reflection stared back at him, but something about the eyes felt heavier, more aware, as though they were not his own. A sudden creak echoed behind him. He spun around, holding his candle high, but nothing stirred. When he turned back, his reflection hadn't moved at all. It stood frozen in the exact same posture, even though his arm was raised and his body shifted, his breath caught in his throat. He waved a hand slowly, and after a long pause, the reflection copied the gesture with an unsettling delay. The silence became suffocating. His ears rang with phantom whispers, too faint to understand but sharp enough to slice into his nerves. He stumbled backward, bumping into another mirror propped in the corner. For a split second, he saw not one reflection but many, a crowd of versions of himself, all staring with empty expressions. When he blinked, they were gone except one of them was still smiling. His pulse hammered as the realization sank in. The mansion wasn't abandoned. It was filled with eyes watching from the other side of the glass, waiting for the moment his courage broke. And in that moment, as the candle's flame flickered low, he finally understood. The mirrors were not reflecting him at all. They were studying him, testing him, preparing to keep him. That night, the mirror made its first move. His reflection blinked slower than him. Sometimes it smirked when he didn't. Each time he turned away, he felt unseen eyes still fixed on him. It wasn't copying anymore, it was watching. That night, the mirror made its first move. His reflection blinked slower than him. Sometimes it smirked when he didn't. Each time he turned away, he felt unseen eyes still fixed on him. It wasn't copying anymore, it was watching. He leaned in closer, trying to test it, moving his hand quickly from side to side. The reflection hesitated, its movements jerky and delayed, like an actor unsure of their lines. For a moment, it even froze completely while he kept moving, and only after several seconds did it catch up. A cold shiver crawled down his back as he realized the glass was no longer a perfect echo of him. It was alive, thinking, and choosing when to move. His breath fogged faintly against the glass, but the reflection's breath didn't appear. Stood there, perfectly clear, untouched by condensation, its skin pale and eyes glinting unnaturally. He pressed his palm flat against the surface, expecting to feel cold glass. Instead, the surface seemed to hum faintly beneath his touch, like something was pulsing deep within it. He pulled his hand back in shock, wiping the sudden sweat from his forehead. Hate tried to walk away, but the feeling of being stalked clung to him. Every step he took echoed strangely, as though more feet followed behind. The mirrors lining the hallway reflected his shape from every angle, but one of them betrayed the truth. In that mirror, his reflection didn't turn with him. It stood, facing forward, smiling in the opposite direction, its eyes locked on his back. Panic fluttered in his chest, but curiosity dragged him back toward it. He raised the candle higher, illuminating the glass. The flame flickered and danced, but the reflection's candle remained perfectly still, its flame frozen in time. Stomach nodded. This wasn't a trick of light, this was deliberate. The reflection wasn't just slow anymore, it was choosing its own reality. The whispers began again, faint and muffled, seeping from the walls and crawling across the floor. They weren't in any language he could understand, yet every syllable felt directed at him. He clutched his ears, but the sound only grew sharper inside his skull, as if it came from within his own head. The mirrors vibrated lightly, like they were resonating with the voices, feeding on his fear. Desperate, he turned in a circle, trying to find a way out. But no matter which door he looked toward, the mirrors shifted, showing different angles of the room that didn't exist. Some mirrors showed him standing closer than he really was. Others showed empty hallways stretching into blackness. He couldn't tell which way was real anymore. The mansion was twisting itself through the mirrors, trapping him in a maze of reflections. Then his eyes landed back on the largest mirror in the hall. His reflection hadn't followed him this time. It was standing still at the far end of the glass, its head slowly tilting as though mocking his confusion. The smile stretched wider now, almost unnatural. And though his chest heaved with terror, the reflection's body remained perfectly calm, breathing steady, like it was waiting for the moment he would finally break. In the dark, the truth always finds a way. He blew out the candle. Silence. Nothing. But when he lit it again, his blood froze. The room glowed with warm light, but his reflection still stood in darkness, its eyes faintly red, its lips curled into a grin. In the dark, the truth always finds a way. He blew out the candle. Silence. Nothing. But when he lit it again, his blood froze. The room glowed with warm light, but his reflection still stood in darkness, its eyes faintly red, its lips curled into a grin. His throat tightened as the candle shook in his hand. He waved it from side to side, but the reflection didn't follow. It stayed frozen in the shadows, smiling wider as if enjoying his fear. The flame flickered violently, like it too was afraid of the figure in the glass. He stumbled backward, his heel catching on a broken chair, nearly sending him sprawling. The reflection tilted its head, still locked in the same patch of darkness. He whispered to himself that it wasn't real, but the pounding of his heart betrayed him. The glass rippled faintly, as though touched by invisible hands. He squinted through the dim glow and saw shapes forming behind his reflection faces. Blurred but unmistakably human, pressing against the surface as if desperate to break through. The whispers returned, sharper now, threading through the silence. They hissed from every direction, filling his ears, his mind, till he could no longer tell if they were outside or inside his head. He clutched the candle tighter, knuckles white, terrified the light would go out. Suddenly, the reflection moved on its own. Its arm rose slowly, deliberately, while his own remained still. His stomach dropped. This was no longer a copy. It was independent, alive, and it was reaching toward him. Glass shuddered, a deep crack splitting across its surface. His reflection leaned forward, closer to the fracture, its eyes glowing brighter, its smile stretching into something inhuman. He backed away in terror, but the room seemed smaller now, the walls inching closer, as though the mansion itself wanted to keep him there. The flames sputtered, nearly dying. In that instant, he realized the horrifying truth. The candle wasn't keeping the dark away. It was feeding the mirror, giving it just enough light to let what was inside see him clearly. The mirror is not just glass, it is a prison. Panicked, he pressed his hand to the surface. The reflection didn't mirror him. Instead, it pressed back, palm to palm, grinning wider. The glass vibrated like a heartbeat. It wanted him closer. The candle guttered in a shaking hand, its flame fighting against the heavy air. He knew he had to run, yet his legs refused to obey. The mirror's surface pulsed like liquid, the crack stretching wider with every heartbeat, and the reflection leaned closer as though it was about to step through. He bolted toward the nearest doorway, but the moment he crossed the threshold, the air shifted. The hall on the other side was longer, darker, and lined with even more mirrors, each one slightly warped. His own image stared back at him a dozen times over, every version wearing that same twisted grin. He turned to go back, but the door he had come through was gone. Behind him was only another mirror, taller than the rest, showing him standing utterly still. He spun around in panic, yet the reflection in that mirror did not move at all. It just stared, unblinking, smiling faintly, as though it had been waiting for him. He shouted, his voice echoing off the endless glass, but the sound didn't return the same. In some echoes, his own scream came back deeper, distorted, like 100 other voices were trapped in the same cry. His skin prickled with the sense that he wasn't screaming alone. One mirror on his left flickered. In it, he wasn't holding a candle anymore. His hands were empty, and his face was pale, hollow, eyes blackened. He staggered back from it, but every step only brought him closer to another mirror, showing something worse. In one, he was bleeding from his eyes. In another, his mouth stretched open in a silent scream, far too wide for a human jaw. The whispers rose to a chorus, sharp and layered, pressing down on him from every angle. He pressed his palms against his ears, but the sound only grew louder inside his skull. The mirrors vibrated in rhythm with the voices, like they were chanting, drawing something closer with every note. He lunged forward, smashing his fist against the nearest mirror. The glass cracked, splintering into a spiderweb, but the reflection didn't shatter. Instead, it grinned wider, blood trickling from its eyes, as if mocking his attempt. Hey! He staggered back, his hand cut and bleeding, only to see every reflection in the hall mirroring his wound, though some showed the cut deeper, the blood pouring faster. He ran. The hall stretched endlessly, his footsteps pounding against the wooden floor that seemed to shift beneath him. Every mirror he passed warped further his reflection, clawing at the glass, begging, screaming silently for him to stop, to look closer, to give in. He glanced once, just once, and regretted it instantly. The reflection he saw wasn't him anymore. It was something wearing his face, its teeth too sharp, its skin too pale, its grin too wide. And as he stared, it lifted a hand and beckoned him closer. The air thickened, every breath scraping like sandpaper down his throat. He stumbled, his candle nearly falling from his grip. The light flickered dangerously, casting shadows across the glass. For a heartbeat, he saw things crawling behind the mirror's hands, claws, and twisted figures pressed against the other side, waiting for the barrier to fall. The crack in the largest mirror ahead split wider, the sound like bones snapping. A pale hand, long-fingered and sharp-nailed, pushed through the opening, clawing at the air. His chest tightened with terror. This wasn't just his reflection anymore. Something was crossing over. Screamed and ran harder, the hall tilting beneath his feet. The walls seemed to bend inward, funneling him toward the broken mirror no matter which direction he turned. The glass around him shook violently, fragments falling and vanishing before they touched the ground. The whispers became laughter, now high-pitched, mocking, endless. Every mirror showed him cornered, shrinking, desperate. In some, he was already being dragged through the glass. In others, he was on his knees, begging. And in one, the reflection had already taken his place, standing in the hall with calm eyes and steady breath. He stumbled to a stop, gasping, the candle flickering lower. His reflection in the cracked mirror stepped forward again, its shoulders emerging, its face stretching into an inhuman smile. The glass groaned, as though about to shatter completely. He realized in horror that if the candle went out, nothing would hold it back. His hands shook so violently the flame nearly died. He dropped to his knees, staring at the candle as though it was the last thread holding his soul in place. The reflection leaned closer, its breath fogging the other side of the crack. Then, slowly, it lifted one blood-stained finger to its lips, as if to whisper a single command. Silence. This time, he didn't look into the mirror. The mirror looked into him. The room vanished. Furniture gone. Walls gone, only endless black remained. He turned toward the glass and screamed. The reflection was outside, holding his candle. He was the one trapped inside. This time, he didn't look into the mirror. The mirror looked into him. The room vanished. Furniture gone, walls gone, endless black remained. He turned toward the glass and screamed. The reflection was outside, holding his candle. He was the one trapped inside. His palms slammed against the cold surface, but the glass no longer gave way. It was solid, impenetrable, while the figure on the other side tilted his head and mimicked his panic with a sickening calmness. The candlelight outside flickered, casting his prison in deeper shadow. He pounded harder, his fists raw and bleeding, yet the reflection only smiled wider. It raised the candle slowly, deliberately, and for a moment he understood whatever was holding the light held the power. Without it, he was nothing but a shadow in the dark. The black void around him shifted. Shapes stirred, crawling closer, whispering in voices too broken to understand. Their movements were jerky, like puppets with tangled strings. And their faces glimmered faintly in the darkness, faces of people long swallowed by the glass. He tried to run, but there was no floor, no walls, only endless black. His steps echoed without direction, and no matter how far he moved, the mirror always hung before him, showing the reflection outside. That figure now walked freely, exploring the mansion that should have been his world. His terror gnawed at him as he realized he was breathing heavier, faster, while his reflection outside moved with steady calm. It had taken his steadiness, his presence, and left him with only fear. The longer he stayed inside, the weaker he felt, like his very soul was unraveling. The shapes in the void crept closer. One brushed his arm, mice, cold, clammy, and real. He spun, but saw nothing but shadow. Still, the pressure lingered, a reminder that he wasn't alone. Hundreds of eyes blinked open in the darkness, surrounding him in a silent circle. He screamed again, but the sound barely left his throat. The glass swallowed it whole, muffled it, turned it into nothing. The reflection outside, holding the candle, tilted his head back and laughed soundlessly, mocking his silence. His legs gave out, and he fell to his knees. The void pulsed with every heartbeat, each throb dragging him deeper into the black. The whispers sharpened into words, now begging him to give in, to stop resisting, to let the darkness claim what was already theirs. The reflection outside crouched before the glass, setting the candle on the floor. It pressed its hand to the surface, desperate, He pressed his palm against it, hoping for escape. But instead of pulling him out, the touch burned, searing through his skin, branding him as something that no longer belonged to the world outside. The flame of the candle outside trembled lower. He shook his head violently, realizing what it meant. If the flame died, his prison would close forever, sealing him with the whispers, with the shadows, with the others who never escaped. He beat his fists against the glass again, begging silently for mercy. But the reflection only rose, calm and confident, his own stolen face, now free to walk in the world he had lost. It stepped away, leaving him behind in suffocating blackness. The shadows surged. Cold hands clutched his arms, his legs pulling him down into the void. He thrashed and fought, but they were countless, and he was weakening. The last thing he saw was the candlelight shrinking, fading, before the mirror swallowed him whole. And then darkness, endless, permanent, hungry. In the dark, you are never truly alone. Shapes stirred in the void. Shadows with hollow eyes and grotesque smiles closed in. They were the souls of those who had vanished before him. At the front stood his reflections, smiling, whispering thoughts directly into his mind. He wasn't the first. He wouldn't be the last. In the dark, you were never truly alone. Shapes stirred in the void. Shadows with hollow eyes and grotesque smiles closed in. They were the souls of those who had vanished before him. At the front stood his reflection, smiling, whispering thoughts directly into his mind. He wasn't the first. He wouldn't be the last. He tried to run, but the ground shifted like liquid beneath his feet. Every step dragged him deeper, like he was sinking in tar. The shadows circled closer, their skeletal hands reaching, their lips mouthing silent screams that had no sound. The reflection raised its hand, and the shadows froze. Its control over them was absolute. It tilted its head, studying him like prey, and then slowly extended one finger toward him, commanding the horde to advance. They lunged all at once. Hands clawed at his clothes, at his skin, tearing and pulling, dragging him down. His voice cracked into a raw scream, but it echoed uselessly, swallowed whole by the black. He kicked and fought, breaking free for a moment, only to be pulled down again. Faces pressed close to his, their eyes empty sockets, their mouths stretching too wide. He saw their pain, their desperation, their eternity, trapped in this place. He stumbled forward, desperate to reach the mirror again. It was still there, floating faintly in the dark, showing the mansion beyond. His reflection had moved on now, walking calmly through the grand hall like it belonged there, as though it had never been trapped. The thought burned through him. If his reflection could escape, maybe he could too. He clawed through the horde, each step a battle, each breath a fight, reaching out for the faint glow of the glass. A hand caught his ankle and yanked hard. He crashed onto the unseen floor, pain jolting through him. Teach, the shadows swarmed over him, dozens of them, smothering him in cold. He thrashed wildly, his fingers scraping the black ground, trying to push forward. The mirror glowed brighter, as if mocking his desperation. He could see the reflection lifting the candle high, calm and steady, savoring the freedom he had lost. His fury surged, giving him the strength to rip himself free from the swarm. He crawled, dragging his broken body forward, blood streaking the ground. His fingernails cracked against the surface as he reached for the mirror. Just a few more inches, just one touch. But the reflection leaned down on the other side, pressing its palm against the glass. Its smile widened, eyes burning with cruel joy. He pressed his own hand against the surface, begging silently. The glass vibrated. For a moment, he thought he might break through. Then the reflection mouthed a single word he couldn't hear, but he understood it. Stay. The glass went cold. His hand slipped. The mirror began to fade, pulling the world of light further and further away. His scream tore through the void, raw and desperate, but nothing reached beyond. The shadows surged again, their hollow faces grinning as they dragged him backward. His nails scraped the last edge of the mirror before the light winked out, leaving only blackness. His final sight was his reflection walking away, holding the candle steady, free to live his life. And in that instant, he realized the truth. The mirrors had never wanted to keep the reflection inside. They had always wanted him. The void closed over him, eternal, suffocating, endless. Somewhere far away, laughter echoed, the laughter of the thing wearing his face. And in the silence that followed, the mirrors waited, polished and hungry, ready for the next soul, foolish enough to look too closely. Not every reflection is real. Some remain forever trapped. By morning, the house looked quiet again, but in the mirror, a figure clawed and screamed silently, pounding at the glass. No sound escaped. Outside, the reflection stood frozen, smiling forever. Not every reflection is real. Some remain forever trapped. By morning, the house looked quiet again. Dust lay thick on the furniture, and sunlight filtered weakly through cracked shutters. To any passerby, it seemed abandoned, lifeless. But the mirrors still gleamed, polished as though someone had cleaned them in the night. Behind the largest mirror, a figure clawed desperately, his mouth wide in a silent scream. His fists pounded against the glass until they bled, but no sound escaped the surface. The world outside carried on, deaf to his cries, blind to his terror. His reflection stood calmly in the empty hall, smiling faintly. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It only waited, perfectly still, like a sentinel placed there to guard its new freedom. The trapped man's nails scraped down the glass, leaving streaks of blood. He tried to shout, to warn anyone who might enter, but his voice died before reaching the surface. The mirror held him like a coffin, sealing his fate in silence. Time moved differently inside. Minutes stretched into hours, hours into days. The trapped soul felt every second of it, his body weakening, yet the glass never released him. Hunger gnawed, thirst burned, but the pain only fed the shadows, crawling closer in the dark behind him. He pressed his forehead against the glass, eyes swollen with despair. Outside, the reflection finally moved. Its grin widened, slow and deliberate, as though savoring his torment. It raised one hand and pressed it gently against the surface, mocking the man's own gesture of desperation. The reflection turned and walked away. Every step echoed like thunder in the trapped man's chest. He pounded harder, terrified of being left alone. The mirrors dimmed as the candlelight outside receded, leaving him in growing darkness. Shadows stirred at the edges of his prison, shapes with hollow eyes and broken smiles. They circled closer with each moment, whispering promises of endless suffering. He backed away, but there was nowhere left to run. He screamed again, his face twisted with terror, but the glass remained cold, unyielding. Outside, the reflection had already begun to explore, free to walk the world, free to live a stolen life. The house settled into silence. The floor creaked, the wind rattled broken shutters, and dust drifted lazily through the air. To anyone outside, it was nothing more than an empty ruin. But inside the mirrors, a storm raged. The trapped man fought, his body shaking, his fists bloody, his voice hoarse from silent cries. The shadows clawed closer, their skeletal hands stretching toward him, their whispers deafening. The reflection never came back. It had no reason to. It had what it wanted: freedom, light, a body to inhabit. The man inside was nothing more than a prisoner now, a soul bound to the glass. Days passed, strength drained away, leaving him slumped against the surface. His eyes dimmed, yet his image never faded. The mirrors preserved him, holding his agony like a trophy. And then, one night, the surface rippled faintly. Another visitor had entered the mansion. The mirrors shone brighter, hungry, eager for fresh prey. The trapped man's eyes widened in horror as he tried once more to pound on the glass, to warn them to scream. But no one heard. No one ever would. Outside, the reflection stood frozen again, smiling forever, waiting for the next victim to look too closely. So the house stands silent, its mirrors polished and waiting. Those who enter never hear the warnings, never see the truth until it's far too late. And when the glass ripples, when the reflection doesn't move quite the way you do, you'll realize the horror wasn't in the house at all. It was in the mirrors, watching, studying, waiting.